everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Team Daddy Weekly Recap. I am your host, Shapiro the Hero, aka Daddy Dreidels. After 14 weeks of grueling football, captain controversies, lots of highs and lows, and even a few late-night surprises, we have reached the end of the regular season, and now we turn our attention to the Team Daddy playoffs. I will have a breakdown of all this past week's activities and a preview of what's to come as 8 teams battle it out for the ultimate title of Daddy this year, and 4 others attempt to avoid punishment in the toilet bowl. But, as always, we begin with a word from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is Puffs Plus with Lotion. As the weather gets colder, you need a tissue that can soothe your burning nose, but that is also strong enough to hold whatever mess you're making without tearing. That's where Puffs Plus with Lotion comes in. With aloe built right into the tissue to help reduce inflammation, Puffs Plus with Lotion cleans up the competition. A nose in need deserves Puffs Plus with Lotion, indeed. We'll begin this week's recap with a battle of fringe teams looking to get into the playoffs as PJ took on Jed, with the winner earning a place in the postseason. And at the end of the night, the commish, while facing controversy for his handling of Josh's captain's choice, was still able to come away with a win over Jed, 164.6 to 118.75. Tyreek Hill led the way for PJ with 33.1 points, and PJ also got 30-point games from Devontae Adams and Khalil Shakir. On the other sideline, Jed was led by David Montgomery with 19.4 points, but ultimately loses both the game and any shot at making the playoffs. After a 3-3 start to the season, Jed finishes up by winning just one of his final 8 games and losing 5 straight to crash out of the regular season and into the consolation bracket. He finishes the regular season at 5-9 and will take on Steve in the Toilet Bowl semifinals. Meanwhile, PJ finishes the regular season as the 7th seed at 6-8, despite losing 4 of his final 6 games. He will face Armenti in the first round of the Team Daddy playoffs. Now, if you stayed up late last night, like me, you witnessed a comeback of epic proportions as George stormed back from a 75-point deficit on Monday night, beating me 175.05 to 165.95. It was the dynamic duo of Jamar Chase with 54.1 points and Joe Burrow with 40.25 points that propelled George to victory, locking Brother 2U into the 4 seed at 9-5. For my team, Captain Devon Achan led the way with 28.35 points, but I ultimately dropped my 4th game in a row to end the season, falling out of playoff contention in heartbreaking fashion. At 5-9, I finished the regular season in 9th place, and I will face Kyle in the first round of the consolation bracket. Meanwhile, George will take on Josh in the Team Daddy quarterfinals. The beneficiary of my late-night collapse was Big John, who also did his job with a resounding 219.75 to 118.85 win over Josh. Puka Nakua led the way for Big John with 46.8 points, and Big John also got 36.3 points from Captain Adam Thielen as he puts up the highest team score for the week. For Josh, it was Justin Jefferson leading the scoring with 41.2 points, but only one other player on his team scored over 15 points. Josh finishes the regular season at 8-6, losing 3 straight to end the regular season. He will enter the playoffs as the 5 seed, taking on George in the quarterfinals. Meanwhile, Big John ends the regular season at 6-8, snatching up the 8th seed at my expense. His reward? Playing Zach in the first round of the playoffs. Speaking of Zach, he locked up the number 1 overall seed with a win over Brett this week, 177.43 to 160. Captain Baker Mayfield led the way for Zach with 40.43 points, and Zach also got 24.3 points from Chase Brown on Monday night to seal the win. On the other sideline, Jared Goff led the scoring for Brett with 30.85 points, but that 0 from Jaden Reed may have cost Brett a shot at a win. Either way, Brett finishes the regular season at 6-8, good enough for the 6th seed. He will take on Swans in the quarterfinals. Meanwhile, Zach locks up the number 1 seed at 12-2, completing an historic regular season. He will take on Big John in the first round of the Team Daddy playoffs. Turning now to the hottest team in the league, Armenti faced off against Steve, with both teams riding impressive win streaks into this game. But when the clock hit 000, it was Steve pulling the upset, 129.5 to 118.9. Jordan Addison led the way for Steve with 48.3 points, and Steve also got 18.6 points from Jordan Love. For Armenti, it was Russell Wilson leading the way with 21.6 points, but that 0 from Jaden Tolbert on Monday night didn't help Armenti's cause. Even though his 7-game win streak was snapped, Armenti still finishes the regular season at 10-4, good enough for 2nd place. He will take on PJ in the quarterfinals. Meanwhile, Steve ends the regular season on a 4-game win streak, but ultimately misses the playoffs at 5-9. The 11th seeded Steve will take on Jed in the first round of the consolation bracket. Our final matchup of the week featured another sibling rivalry as Swans took on Kyle, with both teams already having sealed their postseason fates. And when this one was over, Big Brother Swans emerged the victor, beating Kyle 205 to 144.55. Josh Allen led the way for Swans with 72.3 points, earning another $10 for Swans as the league's highest scoring player this week. Swans also got 24.6 points from Josh Jacobs and 21.4 points from CeeDee Lamb. On the other sideline, Kyle was led by Zach Charbonnet with 47.3 points, but ultimately could not overcome the offensive onslaught his brother threw at him. Despite the respectable finale, Kyle finishes the regular season at 3-11, which plants him in the cellar of the league. Sorry, Kyle. However, not all is lost for Kyle, as he will have a shot at redemption in the consolation bracket, beginning with a matchup against yours truly. Meanwhile, Swans finishes the regular season as the 3 seed with a 9-5 record. His road to a repeat begins with a showdown in the quarterfinals against Brett. Here are the 2024 Team Daddy playoff and consolation brackets. In the playoffs, number 1 Zach will face number 8 Big John, number 4 George takes on number 5 Josh, number 3 Swans will play number 6 Brett, and number 2 Armenti faces off against number 7 PJ. In the consolation bracket, number 12 Kyle and number 9 me will square off, while number 11 Steve will take on number 10 Jed. The losers of those 2 games will move to the Toilet Bowl in Week 16, where the loser of that game will be punished on draft night next year. A friendly reminder to all that while captains no longer exist, the weekly prize for having the highest scoring team and player are still in effect through the end of the season. Even if you're eliminated, you still have a shot at some money, so remember to set those lineups. Thank you as always for watching. This has been your Team Daddy Weekly Recap. I am your host, Shapiro the Hero, and I will see you next time. L'chaim, motherfuckers!